Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Continue reading Krishna book, chapter 86 by A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The kidnapping of Subhadra and Lord Krishna's visiting Shrutadev and Bahulasva. After hearing of the incidents described in this last chapter, King Parikshit became more inquisitive to hear about Krishna and his pastimes, and thus he inquired from Sukadeva Goswami how his grandmother Subhadra was kidnapped by his grandfather Arjuna at the instigation of Lord Krishna. King Parikshit was very eager to learn how his grandfather kidnapped and married his grandmother. Thus Sukadeva Goswami began to narrate the story as follows. Once upon a time, King Parikshit's grandfather Arjuna, the great hero, was visiting several holy places of pilgrimage, and while thus travelling all over, he happened to come to a Prabhas Kshetra. In Prabhas Kshetra, he heard the news that Lord Balaram was negotiating the marriage of Subhadra, the daughter of Arjuna's maternal uncle, Vasudha. Although her father Vasudha and her brother Krishna were not in agreement with him, Balaram was in favor of marrying Subhadra to Duryodhana. Arjuna, however, desired to gain Subhadra's hand himself as he thought of Subhadra and her beauty. Arjuna became more and more captivated with the idea of marrying her, and with a plan in mind he dressed himself like a Vaishnava sannyasi, carrying a tridanda in his hand. The Mayavadi sannyasis take one danda or one rod, where the Vaishnava sannyasis take 3 dandas or 3 rods. The 3 rods or tridanda indicates that a Vaishnava sannyasi vows to render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead with his body, mind and words. The system of Tridanda sannyas has been in existence for a long time, and the Vaishnava sannyasis are called Tridandis or sometimes Tridandi Swamis or Tridandi Goswamis. Sannyasis are generally meant to travel all over the country for preaching work, but during the 4 months of the rainy season in India from July through October, they do not travel but take shelter in one place and remain there without moving. This non-movement of the sannyasi is called Chaturmasya Vrata. When a sannyasi stays in one place for these 4 months, the local inhabitants of that place take advantage of his presence to become spiritually advanced. Arjuna, in the dress of a Tridandi sannyasi, remained in the city of Dwarka for the 4 months of the rainy season, devising a plan whereby he could get Subhadra as his wife. None of the inhabitants of Dwarka, including Lord Balaram, could recognize the sannyasi to be Arjuna. Therefore, all of them offered their respects and obeisances to the sannyasi without knowing the actual situation. One day, Lord Balaram invited this particular sannyasi to lunch at his home. Balaramji very respectfully offered him all kinds of palatable dishes, and the so-called sannyasi was eating sumptuously. While eating at the home of Balaramji, Arjuna was simply looking at beautiful Subhadra, who was very enchanting to great heroes and kings. Out of love for her, Arjuna's eyes brightened and he looked at her with glittering eyes. Arjuna decided that somehow or other he would achieve Subhadra as his wife, and his mind became agitated on account of this strong desire. Arjuna, the grandfather of Maharaj Parikshit, was himself extraordinarily beautiful, and his bodily structure was very attractive to Subhadra, who decided within her mind that she would accept only Arjuna as her husband. As a simple girl, she was smiling with great pleasure looking at Arjuna. Thus Arjuna also became more and more attracted by her. In this way, Subhadra dedicated herself to Arjuna, and he resolved to marry her by any means. He then became absorbed 24 hours a day in thought of how he could get Subhadra as his wife. He was afflicted with the thought of getting Subhadra and had not a moment's peace of mind. Once upon a time, Subhadra, seated on a chariot, came out of the palace fort to see the gods in the temple. Arjuna took this opportunity, and with the permission of Vasudeva and Devaki, he kidnapped her. After getting on Subhadra's chariot, he prepared himself for a fight, taking up his bow and holding off with his arrows, and soldiers ordered to check him. Arjuna took Subhadra away. While Subhadra was thus being kidnapped by Arjuna, her relatives and family members began to cry. But still he took her, just as a lion takes his prey and departs. When it was disclosed to Lord Balaram that this so-called sannyasi was Arjuna, who had planned such a service simply to take away Subhadra, and that he had actually taken her, he became very angry. Just as the waves of the ocean become agitated on a full moon day, Lord Balaram became greatly disturbed. Lord Krishna was in favor of Arjuna. Therefore, along with other members of the family, he tried to pacify Balaram by falling at his feet and begging him to pardon Arjuna. Krishna convinced Lord Balaram that Subhadra was attached to Arjuna, and thus Balaram became pleased to know that she wanted Arjuna as her husband. The matter was settled, and to please the newly married couple, Lord Balaram arranged to send a dowry consisting of an abundance of riches, including elephants, chariots, horses, men servants, and maid servants. Maharaj Parikshit was very eager to hear more about Krishna, and so, after finishing the narration of Arjuna's kidnapping Subhadra, Sukadeva Goswami began to narrate another story as follows. There was a householder Brahmana in the city of Mithila, the capital of the kingdom of Videha. This Brahmana, whose name was Shrutadev, was a great devotee of Lord Krishna because he was fully Krishna conscious and always engaged in the service of the Lord. He was completely peaceful in mind and detached from all material attraction. He was very learned and had no desire other than to fully situated in Krishna consciousness. Although in order of householder life, he never took great pains to earn anything for his livelihood. He was satisfied with whatever he could achieve without much endeavor. And somehow or other, he lived in that way. Every day he would get the necessities of life in just the quantity required and not more. That was his destiny. The Brahmana had no desire to get more than what he needed, and thus he was peacefully executing the regulative principles of a Brahmana's life as enjoined in the revealed scriptures. Fortunately, the king of Mithila was as good a devotee as the Brahmana. The name of this famous king was Bahulasva. He was very well established in his reputation as a good king, and he was not at all ambitious to extend his kingdom for the sake of sense gratification. As such, both the Brahmana and King Bahulasva remained pure devotees of Lord Krishna in Mithila. Since Lord Krishna was very merciful toward these two devotees, King Bahulasva and the Brahmana Shrutadev, he one day asked his driver Daruk to take his chariot into the capital city of Mithila. Lord Krishna was accompanied by the great sages Narad Muni, Vamanadev, Atri Muni, Vyasadeva, Parsuram, Asita, Aruni, Sukadeva Goswami, Brihaspati, Kanva, Maitreya Muni, Chyavana Muni, and others. Lord Krishna and the sages passed through many villages and towns, and everywhere the citizens would receive them with great respect and offer them articles in worship. To the citizens who came to see the Lord and all the assembled sages, it seemed as though the sun were present along with his various satellite planets. On the journey, Lord Krishna and the sages passed through the kingdoms of Anartha, Dhanva, Kuru Jangala, Kanka, Matsya, Panchala, Kunti, Madhu, Kekeya, Koshala, and Arna. And thus all the citizens of these places, both men and women, could see Lord Krishna face to face. In this way they enjoyed celestial happiness with open hearts, full of love and affection for the Lord. And when they saw the face of the Lord, it seemed to them that they were drinking nectar through their eyes. When they saw Krishna, all the ignorant misconceptions of their lives dissipated. When the Lord passed through the various countries and the people came to visit him, simply by glancing over them, the Lord would bestow all good fortune upon them and liberate them from all kinds of ignorance. In some places, the demigods would join with the human beings, and their glorification of the Lord would cleanse all directions of all inauspiciousness things. In this way, Lord Krishna gradually reached the kingdom of Videha. When the citizens received the news of the Lord's arrival, they all felt unlimited happiness and came to welcome him, taking gifts in their hands to offer. As soon as they saw Lord Krishna, their hearts immediately blossomed in transcendental bliss, just like lotus flowers upon the rising of the sun. Previously, they had simply heard the names of the great sages, but had never seen them. Now, by the mercy of Lord Krishna, they had the opportunity of seeing both the great sages and the Lord Krishna and Lord himself. King Bahulaswai and the Brahmana Shutadev, knowing well that the Lord had come there just to grace them with favor, immediately fell at the lotus feet and offered their respects. With folded hands, the king and the Brahmana each simultaneously invited Lord Krishna and all the sages to his home. In order to please both of them, Lord Krishna expanded himself into two and went to the houses of each one of them. Yet neither the king nor the Brahmana could understand that the Lord had gone to the house of the other. Both thought that the Lord had gone only to his own house, that he and his companions were present in both houses. Although both the Brahmana and the king thought he was present in one house only, is another opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This opulence is described in the revealed scriptures as Vaibhava Prakash. When Lord Krishna married 16,000 wives, he expanded himself into 16,000 forms, each one of them as powerful as he himself. Similarly, in Vrindavan, when Brahma stole Krishna's calves and cowherd boys, Krishna expanded himself into many new calves and boys. Bahulaswa, the king of Videha, was very intelligent and was a perfect gentleman. He was astonished that so many great sages, along with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, were personally present in his home. He knew perfectly well that conditioned souls engaged in worldly affairs cannot be 100% pure. Whereas the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his pure devotees are always transcendental to worldly contamination. Therefore, when he found that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and all the great sages were at his home, he was astonished and he began to thank Lord Krishna for his causeless mercy. Feeling very much obliged and wanting to receive the guests to the best of his ability, he called for nice chairs and cushions, and Lord Krishna along with all the sages sat down very comfortably. At that time, King Bahulaswa's mind was very restless, not because of any problems but because of great ecstasy of love and devotion. His heart was filled with love and affection for the Lord and his associates, and his eyes were filled with tears of ecstasy. He washed the feet of his divine guests, and afterward he and his family members sprinkled the water on their own heads. After this he offered the guests nice flower garlands, sandalwood pulp, incense, new garments, ornaments, lamps, cows and bulls, in a manner just befitting his royal position. He worshipped each one of them in this way. When all he had fed sumptuously and were sitting very comfortably, Bahulaswa came before Lord Krishna and caught his lotus feet. He placed them on his lap, and while massaging the feet with his hands, began to speak about the glories of the Lord in a sweet voice. My dear Lord, you are the supersoul of all living entities, and as the witness within the heart, you are cognizant of everyone's activities. Thus, we are duty bound to always think of your lotus feet so that we can remain in a secure position and not deviate from your eternal service. As a result of our continuous remembrance of your lotus feet, you have kindly visited my place personally to favor me with your causeless mercy. We have heard, my dear Lord, that by your various statements you confirm your pure devotees to be more dear to you than Lord Balaram, or your constant Savita, the goddess of fortune. Your devotees are dearer to you than your first son, Lord Brahma. and I am sure that you have so kindly visited my place in order to prove your divine statement. I cannot imagine how people can be godless and demoniac even after knowing of your causeless mercy and affection for your devotees who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness. How can people who know these things forget your lotus feet? My dear Lord, it is known to us that you are so kind and liberal that when a person leaves everything just to engage in Krishna consciousness, you sometimes give yourself in exchange for that unalloyed service. You have appeared in the Yadu dynasty to fulfill your mission of reclaiming all conditioned souls rotting in the sinful activities of material existence. And this appearance is already famous all over the world. My dear Lord, you are the ocean of unlimited mercy, love, and affection. Your transcendental form is full of bliss, knowledge, and eternity. You can attract everyone's heart by your beautiful form as Shyam Sundar, Krishna. Your knowledge is unlimited, and to teach all people how to execute devotional service, you have sent your incarnation Naranarayana, who is engaged in severe austerities and penances at Badri Narayana. Kindly, therefore, accept my humble obeisances at your lotus feet, my dear Lord. I beg to request you and your companions, the great sages and the Brahmanas, to remain at my place at least for a few days, so that this family of the famous King Nimi may be sanctified by the dust of your lotus feet. Lord Krishna could not refuse the request of his devotee, and thus he remained there for a few days with the sages to sanctify the city of Mithila and all its citizens. Meanwhile, the Brahmana Srutadev, simultaneously receiving Lord Krishna and his associates at his home, was transcendently overwhelmed with joy. After offering his guests nice sitting places, the Brahmana began to dance, waving around his wrap. Sutadev, being not at all rich, offered only mattresses, wooden planks, straw carpets, and so on to his distinguished guests, Lord Krishna and the sages, but he welcomed them to the best of his ability. He spoke very highly of the Lord and the sages, and he and his wife washed the feet of each one of them. After this, he took the water and sprinkled it over all the members of his family, and although the Brahmana appeared very poor, he was at that time most fortunate. Period. While Sutadev was welcoming Lord Krishna and his associates, he simply forgot himself in transcendental joy. After welcoming the Lord and his companions according to his ability, he brought fruits, incense, scented water, scented clay, tulasi leaves, kusa straw, and lotus flowers. They were not costly items and could be secured very easily, but because they were offered with devotional love, Lord Krishna and his associates accepted them gladly. The Brahmana's wife cooked simple foods like rice and dal, and Lord Krishna and his followers were very pleased to accept them because they were offered in devotional love. When Lord Krishna and his associates were fed in this way, the Brahmana Shrutadev was thinking thus: I have fallen into the deep, dark well of householder life and am the most unfortunate person. How has it become possible that Lord Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his associates, the great sages, whose very presence makes a place as sanctified as a pilgrimage site, have agreed to come to my place? While the Brahmana was thinking in this way, the guests finished their lunch and sat back very comfortably. At that time, the Brahmana Shrutadev and his wife, children, and other relatives appeared there to render service to the distinguished guest. While touching the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, the Brahmana began to speak. My dear Lord, he said, you are the Supreme Person, Purushottama, transcendental, situated beyond the manifested and unmanifested material creation. The activities of this material world and of the conditioned souls have nothing to do with your position. We can appreciate that not only today have you given me your audience, but you are associating with all the living entities as Paramatma since the beginning of creation. This statement by the Brahmana is very instructive. It is a fact that the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, in his Paramatma feature enters the creation of this material world as Mahavishnu, Garbhadaksai Vishnu and Shiradaksai Vishnu, and in a very friendly attitude the Lord sits along with the conditioned souls in the body. Conditioned soul in the body, therefore every living entity has the Lord with him from the very beginning. But due to his mistaken consciousness of life, the living entity cannot understand this. When his consciousness, however, is changed into Krishna consciousness, he can immediately understand how Krishna is trying to assist the conditioned souls to get out of the material entanglement. Sutadev continued, "My dear Lord, you have entered this